Alright, boxing fans, Kurt Ward here with another boxing news update. I'm joined by regular podcast member Alex Morris, Paul Webb of First Class Boxing, and Eddie Hearn's number one fan, Brian King. Today we're going to be discussing the news about former two-weight world champion Ricky Burns, who'll be fighting in Texas on May 9th, has been declared bankrupt. Brian, I'll go to you first. Who's to blame for this mess?
I don't know if you want a professional show or not here, because Ricky Burns is basically my Achilles heel, and just the thought of actually talking about this, I could end up doing a Lou DiBella and freaking my nut. No, Eddie Hearn, I'm blaming Eddie Hearn. I don't really give a fuck what MD says. Eddie Hearn's to blame for this. He's the one that went and spoke to Ricky. He's the one that get the lawyers to look at the contracts. He's the one that says that the contract was terminated, that he had letters stating the fact that they were terminated. He had people looking over them, and he's quite happy with it. And he's kind of a bullish attitude. Frank Warren, we'll see him in court. We're quite happy with that. It was fucking bullshit. And when he was just constantly asked about it, and he just said, we don't care. We've done the right thing and all that. We've had people look over it. But then come the end of the court case. You've got Barry Hearn coming out that day trying to wash his hands of it and saying, we didn't get our lawyers to look over it and all that. It wasn't lawyers that looked over it. I was like, well, make your mind up. Yeah, there was fucking lawyers at the start, or there's lawyers at the end. So they kind of tried to wash their hands of it. I think it was Hearn's responsibility. And basically he should have kind of stumped up the money to pay for it. But
I read something from Frank Warren today where he said he contacted Ricky and tried to talk about this outside the courts, before it got to that stage, and sort something out. And basically, he was told to basically fuck off. So, it seems a weird one. But in hindsight, do you think Ricky would, if he could go back, would have stayed with Frank, or is the move to Matchroom the right one in his mind?
Well, they definitely wouldn't have left, would they? Because it's cost them actually more money. But one did owe him like $100,000 for the Mitchell fight, and I think that's kind of where the resentment stemmed from. But I kind of get pissed off here. But this guy, I've got hundreds of hate for him because of Ricky. I really have. He took the piss out as well with ticket prices up in Scotland when he was charging everybody else cheaper, and the whole fact of Billy Nelson getting dumped. And there was all cloak and dagger about that as well. That after Ricky signed with Hearn, he was bringing Sims up to kind of just watch the fights and just saying, he's just in the background. He's just in the background taking notes and all that, kind of helping hand. And after the Crawford fight, what Billy Nelson was doing, I think it was Quigg. They were doing sparring for to Quigg. And the Sims Hearn are up in Glasgow having a private meeting with Morrison to try to kind of get this all changed so that Sims takes over. I mean, it's like a wee clique. So it's been nothing but bad for the minute Ricky's left, to go to Hearn, and he's the one that's supposed to protect all his fighters and make sure everybody gets paid. And look what he's done. He's fucked that up, and now he's sending him over to America against Figueroa, who isn't the greatest, but Ricky's not look great either, so this is another kind of try to cash somebody out for a favour for Heyman. He's a fucking cunt.
Alex, do you agree with that? Yeah.
Well, I agree with the fact that he's a cunt and he's a knob and he's a twat, but I'm more sort of measured in my approach about who's to blame for this. I think I'm more balanced about it. I do think Hearn definitely gave him wrong advice. He definitely blew smoke up his ass about the contract's been terminated. We had our lawyers look over it. Either he's got incompetent lawyers or he's talking shit. I think that obviously Frank Warren is to blame in the first place for not paying his fighters. Something that has been an issue with Frank for a very long time. He's an absolute twat for. And Ricky, when that was the issue, I don't think that he should have ran off to Hearn straight away, or Hearn shouldn't have tried poaching him because of that issue. I think Ricky should have went to the board, and if then the board were playing up, then he's got to keep investigating and keep doing things about it and get the board to do something about it, because it's ultimately that's their job. That's what they are there for, and we all know that Frank's got a fairly intimate relationship sometimes with the board, sometimes he doesn't. So I think that obviously he should have done something about that. And again, from Hearn's point of view, with his misleading lawyers or whatever the case was, or bullshit. Ricky, at some point he's got the onus is on himself. People say that a lot about professional sportsmen. They can be a bit naive with a lot of the outside influences being brought upon them, and they've really got to look over these things themselves, which is sometimes unfortunate that so many people would manipulate them like that for their own gain. But unfortunately, that's the facts of it. Ricky was on the bad end of it. He's a nice guy, but I think that Hearn definitely should have had a lot more. He should have been a lot more careful with what he was doing, and shouldn't have been so confident in stealing away a fighter in Frank. Frank's going to recuperate his losses. Frank's going to, we know what Frank's like. He's going to send out the cases. He's going to want his money back. He's going to try and get you for everything he can, and it's good in a way the bankruptcy happened, because that way Frank's not getting his money necessarily, but he shouldn't have come to this. They're all massive knobheads, and that's about it.
I think this is a bit of a marker. Like, just basically see, because everybody left one and went to Hearn. Maybe didn't think some of them was worth the bother, soon. I just think this was a kind of marker to make an example of somebody, and he's left a box in the right bad way.
That's the thing that must annoy Burns the most, though. I mean, he saw all these guys. You got Frankie Gavin recently, you've got Tony Bowyer, you got Cleverly, James DeGale, all leaving Frank Warren to go elsewhere, and there seems to be no problems. I mean, even with Bowyer, there was a bit of going back and forth, but nothing like this. And he's the one who's really been caught with and stung with all this money. Paul, where do you stand on it?
Yeah, I mean, Eddie does certainly have a part to play in it, but the main part of the blame is with Alex Morrison, so Burns' manager. Ricky Burns is not the kind of fighter who reads his contracts in detail. He leaves all of that up to Morrison, and he has done forever. Morrison hates Warren to the point where he made a rash decision to change and move to another promoter without having all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. So as much as I think the problem with Eddie is it's the silence on the issue. So they're looking at it as much as, well, it's Ricky's personal issue, they're not going to talk about it. If it was Frank, we'd sort of expect that. But with Eddie, he comes across a lot more personable with his fighters, that he likes his fighters. And you'd almost expect him to come out and say, this is bad, this is wrong, this is what I think about it. The fact is, Burns, he's an adult, so it's up to him to make sure everything's right. However, Ricky Burns pays Alex Morrison a fair chunk out of his purse for every fight on the basis that his affairs and paperwork are looked after. If Burns is told, you have no problem switching promoter, why would Ricky Burns question it? If he's been telling that by people who he pays to give him that advice. And the thing is, it's like I say, it's the big loser in it is Burns, and I can't think of any boxer who's had a worse 18 months in terms of professional performance and now in terms of the bankruptcy scenario than Burns. It's been a shocker.
Even Deacon's not had this bad a run.
But where does Burns go next? Because like Brian said, he's fighting Figueroa next. I mean, he's been declared bankrupt now, so you'd assume he's going to fight on for, even if he didn't want to. I mean, where does he go now, though, in terms of trying to get the fights that he needs to get these paydays? I mean, are we going to see him just going to be like a Danny Williams type figure who's just going around the world getting paydays and, being a sad figure getting beaten up?
Well, I think it depends. I mean, the Figueroa fight, it's a Heyman fight, so the money will probably be pretty decent. He doesn't beat Figueroa. Again, like Brian, I don't think Figueroa is amazing, but I mean, it's his different level. Ricky Burns is no longer a world-class fighter. He was always incredibly well matched under Warren. Warren picked some very good fights for him, or the matchmakers did. Every fight under Matchroom, he's been poor. You could argue that he's lost his 3 of his last fights. He was getting an absolute kicking from Gonzalez before he pulled out the broken heart. And I don't know where he goes. But what does he do? If he loses his fight, he comes back over. He's maybe a first defence for Mitchell. If Mitchell wins, they could sell the rematch. There's potentials of Crawler. There's a lot of domestic options for him, but how he recoups the kind of money that, if you think of the money that he's earned in the last 2 years or should have earned, it's a bitter blow for him.
I'd die a death, honestly, if he lost against Figueroa and ended up getting brought back, as if something like, I will stick you down Hull against Campbell. I could really see that.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to need to get the money from somewhere, and like I said, if he hasn't got another profession that he's doing, he's not something obviously to step back to. And to be fair, he's not. I mean, he's not an old fighter. He's just not a world class one, and he can still make a living. And Scotland in general has such a small amount of shows. You can still make a living putting on mid-level fights, and yeah, maybe being an opponent for Campbell and an opponent for Coyle or whoever. There are going to be options for him.
It's not good thing. See the thing though with like the matchmaking, like you said there, like Warren got the matchmaking down to a T. But with regards to as soon as he went to him, the first fight he sticks him in. He keeps going on about Vasquez. He says he was going to get Vasquez, which is totally different for the fighter that he actually got in. He got an unknown banger, like nobody'd seen. He was like, oh, he can't be that good. He's like, he must be a bit of a hype job. Total banger, right? So after that, I don't care. Ricky makes him quit. I don't care. You can say like they shot it and all that, but then he said. Then we keep asking again, and I asked him on Twitter. I was like, "You're going to get us Vasquez?" I was like, "We're not asking for much. We're just asking for a big unification fight in Scotland that we don't ever get." I was like, "It's not the hardest thing to do." That's what we're looking into. Right, okay. And then eventually, when Beltran comes, I was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "It's an ex-sparring partner of like Manny Pacquiao." I was like, why are you getting that over when you said you were going to get like Vasquez, or Vasquez is in the pipeline if he beats him? I was like, you're full of shit, mate. I was like, so after that he like breaks his jaw, and then he has to get in with like the top guy of the division, and then after that he comes back. I know this personally. I feel like somebody. They asked who he wants to come back against, right? And they specifically told him, don't get me a southpaw. And what did they do? They go and get another unknown banger who's a southpaw. So it's been nothing but just one shitey thing after another. And Hearn's matchmaking has been fucking shocking.
Why done this though? Why do you think they've had such horrific matchmaking with Burns? I mean, considering that the other matchmaking that they do around the stable is of such a low quality level.
Well, that's the thing. They've went for like giving everybody soft touches until they get a world title to just throwing Ricky in there with people that they've never even seen. I honestly do believe Eddie Hearn's a BoxRec promoter. He'll look at people's records on BoxRec and say, aye, that guy must be shite. I'm pretty sure he done that with that Highland. For like Macklin, I get him over.
It seemed to be that everything that could go wrong with it did. I mean, all of the fights that were matched. I mean, someone like Beltran should never have been. I mean, I don't know. Like, he had to take those sort of fights, but for some reason, none of his fights that he's picked work. But then again, if you look at the defences under Warren, you look at the kind of B-level fighters that he was put in with. Kevin Mitchell was arguably his best defence, apart from when he won the title initially. So it's very, very.
That was his last good performance as well, wasn't it, Kevin Mitchell? How long ago was that now?
Yeah, it's not after that.
Yeah, but we're talking Katsidis post Marquez post. I mean, again, Katsidis, everyone liked watching him, but he was never. The problem with Ricky Burns, if you look at his career, he doesn't have an elite fight because he wasn't able to take fights that he should have done. They should have made the Broner fight. They should have taken that. They couldn't. The fights that Hearn put him in with were all horribly dangerous in their own way. I mean, they go on about the Sergei Kovalev clever matchmaking because it was a voluntary, but Burns fighting Terry Crawford, looking back at it now, was horrible. Even Zlatacanin, it's turned out to be pretty decent. Where did they pull that from? They could have got someone much better much worse, should I say, than Zlatan. And it turns out they've got a guy who's probably a legit sort of top 10 lightweight. It's been very poor with him.
Well, then there's looking up to the light welterweight and all. That was a disaster. Then bringing him back down, and then getting a catchweight to put him right back up again. So I don't know.
It's just hard to see where he goes because he's obviously, like has been said, he hasn't had very good performances. He's picked up losses since he went to Matchroom. Really, he hasn't looked at the same fighter for whatever reason. He's low on confidence as well, and like Figueroa. If that was a few years ago, I think Burns would be in with a great chance. But now he just looks to me like a shot fighter, and with his bankruptcy as well, it's hard to see how his career is going to pan out. To be honest.
See, just like one last thing. See, like it's obviously a collective point. Like who's to blame here? There's Ricky, there's Morrison, there's Hearn, right? But see if this was Warren, there would be absolute fucking hell. Everybody'd be freaking out and saying Warren's a bastard, he's a bastard, oh look what he's doing, he's screwing his fighters over and all that. But now because it's the opposite way about, it's nothing to do with him. He's not to blame. Ricky's like, this is exactly what I get told. Ricky's like a naive, he's not a naive like, wee boy, he's 31-year-old. He should have known what he was doing. But see if you're listening to people that's giving you advice that you're paying for advice, but you're not going to get into lawyers, and like speak to them and they tell you stuff and you're going to go, nah, fuck you. It was like, you're going to listen to what you're getting told. But,
Yeah.
I mean, when people were leaving Warren, everybody was happy, right? But with Ricky, it just seems to be, we're washing your hands of Ricky. It's his own fault.
Well, the thing is,
Hearn needs to take some sort of responsibility for this.
With all the other fighters that left, there were easy exit plans. It's like Frankie was fairly straightforward. The Smiths was a bit complicated, but when Liam re-signed, that seemed to eliminate that complication. But this one was from the start, out of all of the switches, apart from maybe Bellew, this was the one that had the most complications from straight away. It looked wrong. And remember Steve Bunt saying that Burns should go down to speak to an independent lawyer, which is what logically you'd say to do. But Ricky Burns, he's just not going to do that. No, I don't think many fighters would. They just trust who they're with. They trust the people that they think are looking out for them. Alex Morrison's not going bankrupt over this.
No,
Eddie
he was a ready-made ticket seller and a champion, wasn't he? So that was probably the reason why Warren kind of went hammer and tongue on it. He wouldn't have done it with like Bellew and that, even though he loves to ice a man, but...
I mean, they're not going back to Scotland anytime soon anyway, so I think for the Hearns, it's a case of, well, what can you do? Ricky Burns is an opponent. He's on the downslide of his career. They've put a lot into him in terms of investment of shows. I know you've got the issue with the shows that they've put on, but they have given him several shows in his hometown, and he's come up short multiple times. I can sort of see why they're not going mad to try and defend him in a way, but it doesn't fit with the personality that Hearn is putting forward to the public.
Alex, you got any final thoughts on this before we end it?
I'm just trying to sort of work out how it all came about, really. Like you say, is Alex Morrison, it was his job to really look over these documents and give proper advice to Ricky, and obviously Hearn had his part in it by, he came out and said that, we've looked all over it. Obviously that was just his, PR talk, at the press conference that we've heard him say that at. But, who really did look over these documents? Who really did say these things? Did Hearn actually look over them? Did his lawyers do it? Or was it all through Alex Morrison? I mean, was it all just saying, oh yeah, fuck it, we can go whenever you want,
Probably Dave Caldwell at Nando's.
Well, I mean, Matchroom have their own team of lawyers that covers all the events they do across the sports, and you'd think if they'd had a chance to look at it, they'd see the hot. But then again, I tried to look at a lot of the court stuff because there hasn't actually been that much detail from it, but I don't think it's so much that the Hearns people only saw part of the story. And I think when it got to the court process and suddenly these letters were coming out from Morrison and obviously the dodgy racist letters and all this sort of stuff, and it's almost as if Matchroom didn't, you can't say it's naive, but they weren't aware of all of the information at the time. They can only go on the information, the contracts that they had from Alex Morrison and from the board. I think the board immediately spotted a problem. Morrison said there is no problem. They signed him and put him on. And the blame, like I said, lies across all the parties, and no one comes out from this in good light. And it's just, it's one of those, with all the money that we're talking, there was two things. There was that, and there was the gravestone. They're trying to raise money for Matthew Said Mohammed. And it's just thinking, with all the money that's swirling around in the sport, and you've got, for the want of this, was not been a great day for it, really.